Today we're visiting with Cody Book of Book and Cattle and Grain Farm, and Cody's family has been farming in this location for a long time. Tell us, Cody, how long have you been here on the farm?
I've been here since I was born in 1985, and I've been working here since, 12, 14. Now I'm 35, so quite a while. My family's been here since the 1930s when they moved out of Naperville. My great-great-grandpa decided this would be a good place to go.
So this is what we call a multi-generational farm. So which generation are you?
I would be the fourth generation, and my boys, and if my daughter so chooses, would be the fifth generation.
Great. Well, we're excited to see what you're growing here on the farm today. Tell us a little bit about the type of cattle that you raise.
We raise a lot of crossbreds, whether it be a Holstein Angus cross or just straight beef crosses. We feed steers, and we raise actually some heifers that we feed out to finish as well.
Great. Well, let's get going and take a look at what you've got to offer here today.
Okay.
So we've moved over to one of the barns where Cody keeps some of the animals, and I see that they're all black animals. So can you tell us what breed this is?
These are actually a Holstein cross with probably an Angus or a Galvy.
So when these animals came to your farm, they weighed about how much?
Probably 300 to 400 pounds, right in there.
And the ones we're looking at right now weigh about what?
Like 500 to 600 pounds.
And how long did it take to get those extra 200-300 pounds?
When they're younger, they gain a little bit more per day, but on average, from the time they get here to the time they leave, let's say 1,400 pounds, they'll average 3 to 4 pounds per day, depending on the animal, somewhere in that range.
3 to 4 pounds a day. Man, that must be a lot of feed. About how much do these guys eat?
Anywhere from 20 to 30 pounds of dry matter a day, depending upon.
And what's in this feed that they're eating?
So we feed what's called a totally mixed ration, TMR, which is, in our case, either corn silage or haylage, high moisture corn, corn gluten, dry distillers, probably some dry hay, nutrient mix in a pellet form that's kind of like a multivitamin. Whatever they're not getting from the feed that we're providing and growing, that's what's in that. And also what we call VIM, which is from a recycling place that takes stuff that hits the floor at manufacturing, like General Mills, or expired food off the shelves, and they mix that into a complete ration with high fat, high protein, etc.
So you're talking they might be eating some people food.
And might be eating some people.
So what kind of people food would be in this mix?
In the VIM, you'd have pasta, you'd have nutrient bars, you'd have cereal, possibly some candy, but it's the same every time, which is important. These cattle want a consistent diet. You don't want them up and down, up and down.
Well, that sounds like a great way to do some awesome recycling instead of it getting into the landfill.
Absolutely. It's good for us, it's good for the companies, it's good for everybody.
So it's important for animals to stay comfortable so that they will do all that eating and growing. So Cody, tell us a little bit about this unique looking building that we're standing next to.
So this is a monoslope structure, and the way it works is it has one slope open to the south, so in the wintertime the sun will hit the back of the feed, or the back of the pack, and in doing so it's warm all the way to the back and dry. Dry is important. Wet creates, problems with respiration, things like that. And the reason for this open structure also in the summertime is you can feel the wind kind of tunnels down through there and it accelerates it. On the back, it's a vented wall. Airflow creates everything we want in our house. We want it to be cooler. We want it to be, consistent, not really, really hot at one point, really, really cool at one point. We bed the cattle with either straw or corn stalks that we have as a byproduct from growing wheat or corn, and we'll do that anywhere from 1 to 2 times a week depending upon need. We try to keep the manure hauled anywhere from 1 to 2 times a week as well. When it's really hot like it is right now, we'll tend to not handle the cattle because it's hard on them. We don't want to stress them out. It's pretty easy for them to go into a problem because of it. Their lungs aren't a whole lot bigger than ours, but they're a lot bigger than us because they struggle to keep their temperature down.
I noticed when we were standing in the shade, it was probably 10 or 15 degrees cooler, and that's where most of the animals are hanging out today. So I think you're exactly right, and the design really helps keep them a lot more comfortable.
Absolutely. That's the idea.
Farmers work very hard to keep their animals safe and healthy, and now we've moved into the animal hospital, for lack of a better word, here on the Book Farm. Cody, tell us what's going on in here.
So what we've got in here is a place where we bring our animals that aren't feeling the best. Maybe they just need to be separated from the group for a little while. You know, they might have a bad foot, which usually they get over from just not running around and being silly like we would. Sometimes they've got a respiratory issue in their lungs. Sometimes, you know, they've got a viral infection, and we have to treat that. We can only treat it within so many days of the end, you know, processing, and that's regulated by, you know, different groups that we just don't do that because we don't want it to get in the meat. What we do is we bring them into this thing right here, which is called a tub, and we push the tub, and they end up in this round chute right here. And the reason it's round was developed by a lady by the name of Temple Grandin and some other folks in the industry who figured we need to not yell at cattle. We need to let them do their own thing naturally. And following their buddy in front of them, but not seeing where they're going, is a lot calmer situation. Calmer cattle means less stress means less sickness, less injury, etc. By the time they make it over here, we've got what's called a squeeze chute. It doesn't squeeze them too hard, it just immobilizes them enough where we can treat them safely, and then release them, and then we'll put them into a holding pen out here, which we'll take a look at. And we can watch them that way and see if they need to be retreated, or in a few days, if they're good enough, we'll put them back out with their buddies. We know when they're treated and what they're treated with by the ear tag, which I'll show you as well. Every animal gets tagged, the date's written, what we treated them with, and we keep records on that so we don't overtreat. You know, just like you and I, we can't have too much of one thing or it can be harmful on us.
You mentioned vaccinations. Do the calves receive a vaccination when they arrive on your farm?
Yeah, everything gets a vaccination, usually within about 2 weeks. We used to treat them like the day they got here, and the shipping stress plus the vaccination sometimes had adverse effects. So we've switched that to a little bit later when they get acclimated, and that's worked out pretty good for us.
And what types of things are you vaccinating for?
It's usually like a 5-way vaccine, so kind of like common cold, common pneumonia, for us, the equivalent.
So we've moved over to a great big pile of straw bales. Tell us how you came to make all this straw.
So this is what's left of last year's wheat crop. Last year's wheat, after we combine it for the wheat grain, which goes into bread and pasta and some different feeds for animals, etc. This is the byproduct. This is the straw. Essentially, this is the stalk of the plant. And we'll take and bale it up just like this. And this pile is probably about 8 times the size. We make about 1,000 to 1,200 round bales a year. And then we use it for bedding in the cattle to keep them comfortable. We're about ready to do it again here 2 weeks, maybe. We'll probably be combining wheat and baling straw.
So I know a lot of times my students see these big bales and they always think it's hay. Can you tell us the difference between hay and straw?
Sure, straw is real coarse, kind of absorbent. It will absorb more wetness. It's usually got a real golden color, as you can see. Hay will be greener. Hay is almost always for feed. They eat that. They can and will eat this, but they'd prefer to lay on it.
Right, so it's really 2 different crops.
Completely 2 different crops.
But when they're harvested, they look very similar out in the field.
Just because the way they're put into a bale, whether it be round or big squares, yes.
Right, so you use the same type of machinery to put them into this.
Exactly, yep.
Excellent. So over here I see piles of dirt. Can you tell us what that is?
Well, it's becoming dirt. It's not there yet. That's composted cattle manure. So when we haul during the summer, because we don't have any open fields in order to apply it, we need to go somewhere with it. We can't just let it build up in the pens. So we take and we'll lay it down on a row like this with our manure spreader, and then we turn it. We aerate it anywhere from 1 to 2 times a week, depending on how much it rains or doesn't rain. In doing so, there's microbial activity that goes on inside of it that breaks it down into essentially a really rich, fine dirt. So you'll lose about at least 50% of your actual mass. So if the pile comes in, you know, it's 6 foot tall, it'll end up being, you know, maybe 3 foot tall, give or take. So there's less actual material for us to haul out into the fields when the wheat comes off or when something opens up for us to spread on. And it also is really good that we have this because we can haul the drier material to a farther away field that needs it instead of just hauling around home.
Absolutely. And so this is actually a type of fertilizer you're putting back onto the field, correct?
Absolutely. This is a type of fertilizer that we put on the field. Most guys would really, really like to have it in the grain farming world, but you gotta be willing to feed cattle 365 days a year in order to have it.
Another great example of recycling on your farm.
Exactly.
Now it looks like I'm standing in front of a lake, but I don't think this is a lake. Can you tell me what this is, Cody?
Yeah, so this is where, when you get a massive amount of rain, we try to keep our pens as clean as possible, but you're going to lose some runoff. Our whole farm slopes to this point. Actually, there's 3 of these collection points, but this is the main one. And it hits this first part where you can see that short wall, and the solids will settle out in this first part. So you get the solids out right there. Then the liquid goes out over the top into this lagoon. Lagoon is clay lined, and it filters out any impurities before it gets out into the groundwater. This is like 4.5 foot deep. That might be 5 to 6 foot deep out there. The geese and ducks love it. I used to ice skate and play hockey on it. What that is, we do it to keep it out of our groundwater and out of your groundwater.
So when you say it seeps out, it's just a natural, it seeps through the clay soil.
Yep.
And then it just keeps going out into the groundwater, but that clay is filtering it. Is that correct?
It's extremely slow. It's filtering it. You know, if you tested the water 50 feet on the other side of this, you wouldn't know.
Great. Now the solids that are here in the front of us here. Now, do you have to clean that out? What do you do with that material?
We'll clean that about 2 times a year, depending on how many big rains we get and how many solids might be in it. And we'll put it on our compost piles like we talked about earlier and let it break down.
Awesome. Another great recycling system here at the Book Farm.
Absolutely.
Our last stop to see how big the animals get is at this feedlot. And these animals look a lot bigger to me, Cody. How big are these guys?
These guys are kind of ready for market. They're right around 1,300 to 1,400 pounds. They're towards the end of their journey here, and done. They get a completely different ration. The rations change from when they get here to when they leave. This is a finisher ration. Those are starter rations, and there's like 7 steps in between. You can't just throw them onto full feed right away with a finisher ration. It can hurt them. It could kill them, actually.
So the ration, and how does that, that's what they're eating.
Yep.
So how does that affect the meat that we ultimately eat?
It kind of tells everything about when you look at a piece of beef. Yes, there's breeding involved in how much fat potentially they could have, which fat gives flavor. But how it's fed is how it speckles the fat through the meat or on the edge of the meat. Everything about it, leads into an end result.
So quality feed is important for a quality end product.
Quality feed, quality housing, quality of life. A happy animal is a sound animal.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So we hear a lot about that we should eat. Some people think we shouldn't eat a lot of meat. Some people think we should eat a lot of meat. Can you tell us what are the benefits of eating a high quality beef?
Well, eating beef, gets you zinc, it gets you iron, it gets you protein. A lot of that you cannot make up for, not with a supplemental vitamin. There's just no way of replacing what nature gives us, with a beef animal.
Hey, Cody, we've learned so much about your beef operation. And any final words you'd like to leave with us?
There's a lot of opportunity for anybody out there who wants to get into agriculture. It's not just raising cattle. It's a nutritionist. It's the person who delivers the supplemental feed. It's the guy who works on the chopping crew and helps us put up our haylage. It's the cattle truck driver who takes it to market out in Skyland, Nebraska. It's the cattle buyer from Skyland, Nebraska who comes, looks at our animals and says, I want to buy those. It's the guy in the grocery store who stocks the shelves. It's the person who buys the meat from the stock plant. Thousands of options. I just hope more of you guys want to get in to agriculture.
Absolutely. The sky's the limit. I think in Illinois, like 1 out of every 4 jobs is related to agriculture. So definitely great opportunities out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.